the FBI was too willing to accept and use politically funded and uncorroborated opposition research, such as the Steele dossier. The FBI relied on the dossier in FISA applications, knowing there was likely material originating from a political campaign, a political opponent. It did so even after the President of the United States, the FBI and CIA directors and others received briefings about intelligence suggesting that there was a Clinton campaign plan underway to stir up a scandal tying Trump to Russia.
There was special counsel John Durham yesterday slamming the FBI's conduct during the Russia hoax investigation. There was no Russia collusion with Trump. Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer is also accusing the FBI of stonewalling his investigation into the Joe Biden bribery scheme and the influence peddling going on for decades, saying that the agency heavily redacted two new unclassified FBI 1023 forms. He's now asking, quote, what is the FBI hiding from Congress? Joining me right now is Tennessee Congressman, member of the House Oversight and Foreign Affairs Committees, Tim Burchett. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. I'm going to get to the Joe Biden stuff in a moment, but first, give us your reaction to John Durham yesterday, basically saying it straight that the FBI had no basis to open any investigation into Russia collusion, and they knew that Hillary Clinton was stirring up this idea to take Trump down with some Russia tie.
I think it shows the corruption at the highest levels of our federal government, Maria, and it's very scary that our most important intelligence agency in this country has been corrupted by Hillary Clinton and the dollars that she's thrown around. And you know, it's in third world countries we'd call that a coup, but thank goodness that she was not successful in her bid for the presidency, or this would just continued. I think it shows a real pattern in our federal government right now. And Maria, I've said this many times, and we're going to have to get serious about defunding these agencies. We have an FBI that's wanting to build a structure as large as the Pentagon, and folks are saying that if we stop that, that's cutting funding. Well, no, that's additional funding. We need to talk about restructuring the entire agency at this point.
Well, I mean, I don't understand why we don't all agree on this, the Republicans and the Democrats, to come together to try to take out the weaponization from our federal government, take out the bias at the top of the FBI. But that's not what we're seeing. I mean, you had the House censor Adam Schiff yesterday after he, for years, went on different TV shows and said that there was Russia collusion in plain sight. At the time, he was the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, so we all, expected that he knew more than we did. He didn't. He lied. So now he's being censored, and the Democrats are trying to act like this is some kind of a badge of honor. Let's watch a little of that with Kevin McCarthy yesterday with the gavel. Watch this.
The yeas are 213 and the nays are 209. With 6 answering present, the resolution adopted. Without objection, the motion to consider is laid on the table. House will be in order.
Congressman, what an embarrassment. Your colleagues on the left are celebrating Adam Schiff, calling the censor shame. Do they not see what we see? That they should be voted out.
Yes, ma'am. This is all about power, Maria. It's about power, money, influence, all those things. It's not about doing what's right. And that's clearly all leadership is really about in the Democratic Party is keeping them in power and keeping their little fiefdoms together and running this country into the ground, which financially they're doing and morally and of course in other ways we can get into on other shows. But the reality is that the Democrat Party, their rudder is headed far left, and it's just where this country's going downhill. And you have when President Trump, during his State of the Union, I don't care what you think about Trump, but when he said America will never be a socialist nation during his State of the Union, and over half the United States Congress refused to stand up, and the media didn't expose that, didn't show that, and yet this is another instance of that. You have a man who's clearly lied to the American public time and time again. I was in the Schiff during some of these high-level talks, and it was pathetic. It was pathetic. The people you saw in the Schiff versus the ones you saw walking out in front of the mics, it was just a complete 180. And I think that really shows the clear difference in this country and our parties. And we As I've stated many times, we need to pray for our country, Maria, because we are going downhill fast.
Mike Baker is former CIA. Mike, what an embarrassment these Democrats are. I mean, I'm outraged by this, by their behavior. We should all agree that you do not lie about Russia collusion putting a sitting president on defense.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how we walk that dog back and get a less partisan environment up on Capitol Hill. But, Congressman, circling back with Hunter Biden, with the plea deal related to the tax charges and the gun charge, has the Oversight Committee been officially informed that the investigation is now closed? And if so, does that make it easier for James Comer to request access and actually obtain relevant documentation to continue looking at the potential pay-for-play or money laundering or bribery schemes?
Well, no, that's the trick the FBI uses. They said we're still investigating, and yet they investigated this last one 5 years, and literally, I mean, in Tennessee, I've seen people get harsher penalties for driving violations. You know, it was a gun violation. He lied on a gun form as a felony. He didn't pay over $1 million in taxes, and yet nobody's asking where this money has come from. And it's pretty clear where it came from. A lot of it did, from Chinese, from corrupt foreign nationals that flowed into the Biden crime family. You know, they got over 20 bank accounts and LLCs set up for this money, yet our Justice Department refuses to do anything about it. And it's just, it's a disgrace, really. It's very evident what's going on, and it's very evident that there's two rules of justice in this country. It's the haves and the have-nots, and obviously the Bidens are the haves, and the rest of the country is the have-nots.
So do you have any more information about the bank records that you have subpoenaed in terms of how much money the Biden family has taken in? I mean, this is also an extraordinary story, which, of course, is being clouded out by the indictment of Trump.
Well, the problem with a lot of it is always, Maria, that it's in confidential documents and we're not allowed to share. And a lot of it's redacted. That's the problem Chairman Comer has run into. You know, when they talked about the recordings of the oligarchs bribing Biden, that was not in any of the forms that I read. Those were blocked out, as the case may be. And so that's what they continue to do, is they'll continue to say we're investigating, but yet the reality is they're just covering up for the Biden family and all their associates. And you have, I mean, some of their associates are their minor children that they put this money in. And why is there no questions there? There's no questions being asked by the federal government, by the federal investigative bodies. And to me, it just shows corruption, as it did in the dossier and all the other implications that we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, that's also outrageous, Kayleigh. And the fact that Christopher Wray and the FBI redacted the line in that 1023 FBI form that said that the Burisma executive had 17 audio recordings of conversations that he had with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Yeah, and it was redacted.
And Congressman, I want to go back to the Durham testimony for a moment, because the rot in the FBI that his report has exposed is stunning. And I want to ask, what are some of the actions that are on the table among you and your colleagues to hold the FBI accountable? You know, some have floated potentially cutting off funds to the FBI. Others have, you know, suggested firing the people who are responsible. What are some of the actions that you and your colleagues would be willing to consider?
Well, the top two floors of the FBI need to cleaned out. It's a rat's nest. It's pretty obvious of that. And we've got to look at the funding and restructuring the entire FBI. It should not be a political body of either party. They should be a very neutral, down-the-middle group. And that's what they used to be. And I know several FBI agents in my community. My college roommate, his father was a top FBI agent there in Knoxville. And so, you know, these people are being, you know, their careers are being, you know, they're ruined almost because of the corruption at the top level, and it has no you know, there's no rhyme or reason to it other than it's just corruption and it's power and it's politics as usual in Washington, D.C. And we've got to. We got to have some guts to start cutting their money, Maria. That's the bottom line.
All right, Congressman, we're going to be watching that. Thanks very much for being here this morning.